Okay, everybody, let's get started. All right, so what are we going to cover today? Today is one of our quarterly cybersecurity trainings. Today, we're going to do something different. We're going to be proactive and talk about what to do if you've been hacked. Now, this is also the same thing, what to do if you had some kind of disaster outage or anything like that, all very similar planning. The best time to do this is now, before something happens. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of things. You're going to come away with a whole incident response plan, hopefully, that will allow you to navigate an issue. You really want to be proactive on this, so let's dig into it. First question that we want to talk about is, why are we doing this? Why is this an issue, right? So basically, hacking and breaking into people's systems is a $10 trillion industry. This is a major corporation that we're fighting now. These are actual people that are actually trying to get into your system, and it's only projected to get worse. The number of penetrations happening are projected to be on the upside. What we want to do is get ahead of this and actually stop it so that it's not profitable to them. These are a business and they run an entity and they actually have people that they hire. They hire people and recruit people just like you do. They recruit people and employees just like you do. This is a very profitable industry. They have infrastructure, they have systems, they have accounting departments, they have everything. That's why it's so tough to beat these guys, because they've turned it into an industry and into an attack for them. Now, what we want to talk about is staying up and running. Now, whenever we do cybersecurity presentations, it's unfortunately, it's always very easy to come up with recent events. So we're going to talk about a recent event that just happened a couple of weeks ago with the FAA. The entire FAA system, well, sorry, not the entire FAA system, the NOTAM system, which stands for Notice to Air Missions, was down. And what that meant is that grounded all the flights across the United States for 1.5 to 2 hours. Why did this happen? This happened because a single individual, from what we're reading, single individual had the ability to corrupt a single database file, which then took down the entire FAA's NOTAM system. And what does that tell us? It tells us quite a few things. It tells us, one, they did not test their disaster recovery plan, or they didn't have a good one. Number two, it tells us that they had a single point of failure. They had one person that was able to take down their whole system. That means they had a single point of failure instead of having checks and balances. And they obviously had not been testing their system, right? So we want to get around that. All right, and what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about the plans to put in place so that this doesn't happen to you. All right, so quick, brief introduction to us. We are Braver Technology Solutions. So many of you on this call and watching this video, many of you are clients, some of you are not. We are a managed service provider, primarily located in the Northeast. We have clients all over the country, but primarily in the Northeast. We have solutions for all sorts of industries and all sorts of applications. We help our clients be proactive and move along. That's enough of a sales pitch. We've been around for more than 30 years. We're awesome. Let's go for it. All right. Let's talk about what we're going to take away today. So the goal for you to take away today is, number one, we want you to have an incident response plan. We want you to have something that you can refer to if something happens. It's so much easier to have it on hand and ready. We're going to go through the steps to take if you are compromised. You want to look at these now. You want to do them all proactively. We talk about preventing the spread and assessing the damage. We're going to do when to organize your troops and how to utilize them. We're going to do a live spin-up demo. We're going to show you what it looks like to bring a server up online. We're going to be conducting we're going to tell you about conducting post-event analysis, which is just as important as the pre-event, and then talk about avoiding future incidents. Okay, so let's get to the substance of it. We're going to talk about incident response planning. I'm going to repeat this again. You want to do this before an incident happens. That's why we're having this webinar now. We're not having it afterwards, we're having it now. You want to have everything in alignment. First thing you're going to do is we're going to talk about creating an incident response plan. It's incredible to have the foundation of this in place and ready to go. You want to be able to have a checklist. It's so much easier to follow a checklist that you have put together before the incident happens. It's very difficult to make this up and figure it out on the fly. You want to have this policy and this plan in place and ready to go. Next, you're going to have a team, all right? Team is going to decide who is going to do what, when they're going to do it, how they're going to do it, right? It's important to define that team. You don't want to figure it out after the fact saying, oh, well, Bobby should do this or Tammy should do this. You want to know ahead of time whose job it is to do what. The other thing you want to do is you want to have a backup to your team. Some of you may have a team of one. That's okay. You should have a backup of that team and also anybody on your team. Make sure they have more than one person in place because vacations and sick time take place. A lot of times that's when these incidents happen, right? It's not always by coincidence either. I'm going to touch on that a little bit later on. So you want to have a core group that's ready and their job is to be the incident response plan. We're going to talk about developing a playbook. We're going to give you some checklists to go through in this webinar. But basically, you don't want to go through this as the event happens, although a lot of stuff is going to be happening all at once. You really want to have a playbook because there's so many different moving parts that are happening at the same time. You're going to get a taste for that when we go through our webinar right now. When you have a checklist, those of you who use checklists, you know it's a lot easier to follow that checklist when you already have it in place, right? And that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about communication. A lot of people forget about the communication, but that's really important during an event. There's a lot of different types of communication. We're going to talk about those different types of forms of communication, who you communicate to, but basically you want to know how are you going to communicate, what are you going to communicate, who are you going to communicate, and what organizations are who are going to call. Who to communicate with is just as important as how you communicate. Okay, then we're going to go for identify lesson learned. So this is post-incident, right? What did we do right? What did we do wrong? What can we learn? What can we do better? This is a really bad event that happened, whatever it may be. It might be an employee that did something silly. It might be an actual breach that happened because of security. Whatever it is, it's a bad situation. Let's not make a bad situation worse by not learning from it. It's important to learn from it. Okay, there's a lot of stuff on here. You don't have to write this down, and I'm certainly not going to read it all off on you. This is actually going to be in the documents that we're going to give you by attending this. We're actually going to send these to you. For those of you watching this later on YouTube, there's going to be a way that you can also request this information as well. But we're going to basically create a business continuity plan. Okay, now we're really going to get into the step-by-steps of this. Okay, so number one, coordinate with your IT provider, right? So this would be step number one on your incident response plan. Is it obvious? Well, I hope it's obvious, but it may not be for when an incident is happening. Let's make sure that you coordinate with them because what they're going to do is they're going to start putting things in place right away to hopefully lock out the bad guys. There's some things that we may want you to do as well, and we're going to touch on a couple of those, but they're the first people we're going to call because we want to stop the spread as quickly as possible. It takes a long time sometimes to stop the spread because a lot of times the bad guys have already been in there for a long time and they've already been doing a lot of bad things, and it takes a while to pull them back out again because they intentionally have moved themselves into a position to make that difficult. All right, next, you're going to contact your cybersecurity insurance provider. Your insurance provider is going to give you a bunch of resources that you are going to be able to utilize. One of them is going to be an incident response team. We're going to talk about incident response teams in a little bit, but for us, Cyber 74 is an incident response team that we highly recommend. And essentially what that team is going to do is they're actually going to manage the incident itself. They're actually going to manage going through that. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, but essentially your insurance company is going to give you access to those things and give you guidance in that. Next, you want to talk about you want to talk to your legal team. You want to talk to them and say, okay, what do we want to do? What do we want to say? What position we are. We're going to talk about communication in a little bit, but your legal team is going to help guide you. You don't want to call them after the fact. You want to call them at the beginning. This is a big one that a lot of people miss. They're also there to help you and protect you. Take advantage of them. Going to contact law enforcement. The sooner you contact the law enforcement, the better chance you have of getting funds back if they were withdrawn. Again, this is especially the case for those who are done an accidental wire transfer or something like that. The law enforcement, the sooner you can get in there, the better chance they have of rolling that back. Sometimes, unfortunately, you didn't find out the incident happened until months later because it was a scenario. Now, if you go back and watch our phishing scenario, you'll know what I mean by that. That sometimes an incident happens, you don't find out until months later. But contact the law enforcement. All right, have your plan ready. That's what we're building today. This is why you have it. This is why you should have it. We're building an incident response plan. Have that ready. Have it in a place where you know what it is. You don't want to look for it. Monitor your people. This is another one that a lot of people don't think of until after the fact. Monitoring your people is really key because your people are going to be stressed on what's going on. They have deadlines to meet, they have people to call, they have clients to call, and you're telling them don't do any of those things right now. You need to be in touch with your people, keep them in the loop, have a plan, reassure them that everything will be fine. We're going to get through this. We have a plan. We're following the plan. We know you're inconvenienced. We know you're stressed, but we're going to get through this. All right, next. Don't contact the bad actors. That's the job of the incident response team. If you contact the bad actors directly, you could be giving up valuable information and valuable assets that you don't need to. There's a certain way to contact these bad guys to get through the damage. You want to leave that to the experts. Okay, next. Listen to your experts. Listen to all the people that we have listed here. You want to follow them. This is not the first rodeo. Been through this before. You know who to call, when to call, what to do. That's what the experts are for. Delegate keeping the lights on to members of the team. So basically that means have a single point of contact to your team. We're going to talk a little bit more about clients too and vendors, but you want to have a single point of contact so that everybody has a single message. This is going to be really important. You want to have, and this is going to be, I'm going to reiterate this a couple times throughout our team, throughout this message. It's important that there's a single point of message for employees, vendors, and clients. Continue answering the phone, respond to the emails. You want to keep your clients and your vendors, you want to engage them and let them know what's going on. You're going to be a little vague on this. You're going to say, hey, listen, we understand there's an incident. We're working on it. But you at least want to talk to them, especially some of your bigger clients. You might want to call directly and talk to them one-on-one. Get your story straight. This is where we're going to talk about communication. With the guidance of your expert, you're going to determine how much to share and with whom. Do not speculate on what's going on with anybody. When you speculate, what will happen is people will only hear what they want to hear. They won't hear what you're saying. You could say, hey, listen, it may be this, this, and this. They're going to hear, oh, it's that. No, that's not the case. You want to make sure that you don't speculate. You want to give a generic message that says, we understand right now there appears to be a system outage that's happening. Our team is working on it. We'll get back to you with more information. You want to be very standard and vague on this until you have the full details to get back, right? You want to make sure that you're not getting any legal trouble with what you're saying too, right? Like you want to make sure that you're running this through your legal counsel, you're running it through all the right people that are saying, okay, yes, it's clear to say this, right? And same thing with your employees, right? So coordinate with your team on the communication. Again, it's better to have, whenever possible, have a single point of communication with your clients. It's not always possible, but in that case, you want to make sure that your whole team is giving the same exact message. You don't want one person saying one thing and another person saying another thing. That creates mistrust, it creates misdirection. It's not good on any level. You want to ensure your message is approved by the breach counsel, especially for your internal employees, right? You want to make sure that what you're saying, it's actually best if you can write that out ahead of time. Write out some general statements, much like what I said, that are already pre-programmed in, ready to go. Hopefully you never need them, but it's better to have them and not need them and need them and not have them. All right, be aware of regulations. For those that are you in regulated industries, you have to be careful on what you say, and then run damage control on key affected clients. So obviously you're going to give those certain clients a one-on-one call. You're going to give them, hey, listen, I know something's going on. I can't give you all the details right now because we're still investigating it, but I want to make sure you know that we have things under control. We have the right people working on this. Gather evidence from prior security audits. This is where you're going to poll your employees. You can talk to them and you're going to say, hey, did anybody see anything odd that happened before this incident? This is extremely important. This is a lot of times, these are the keys that we need to say, oh, this is how they got in. This employee clicked on this, or this person saw this, or this is really important to gather this information beforehand. Okay. Next, preventing the spread. So what we're going to do is we're going to assess the damage, right? How widespread is the attack, right? If the attack happened on only a few devices, that gives us insight on what this attack is and how it came in. If it's widespread across the whole industry, that gives us another insight on it. So we want to find out how widespread it is because it's going to help us not only determine how it got in, but how to stop it, right? But you need to pull the plug on your own tools. So this is going to be more for those of you who have internal IT departments. Do you need to pull your tool sets off? Are your tool sets being violated that you need to pull them down? Delegates triage support to affected clients. So we talked about this in the previous slide. You want to make sure that you have single people that are talking to your clients whenever possible so that the message is the same. All right. Secure additional outside help and surge capacity. This is where you can utilize us or Cyber 74 to help help you move forward, right? A lot of times there's a lot going on, a lot of moving pieces in play. That's why we have an entire security division to help move that along. All right, locking down. This one is going to be really odd for you, but I want to make sure that I stress this point. If at all possible, do not shut down the computer. Now, number one thing we want to do is disconnect it from the internet, either Wi-Fi or Ethernet cable, right? Number one thing, because that's how the bad actors are typically getting in and how it's talking to other computers. So we want to disconnect it from the network. However, when at all possible, we actually want to leave it powered on. The reason we want to leave it powered on is that a computer has memory. And inside that memory is little snippets of information that we can sometimes utilize and dump, and it gives us backup data as to how to get you what happened. And once the computer is down, that data is blown away. It's shut down, right? So when that computer is on, it actually can give us potential information to grab information that's stored in that memory that can be very critical when we're trying to uncover and undo the damage. Don't delete or overwrite anything. If you see something suspicious, leave it. This is going to give us, again, it's going to give us insight into what's happening. It's going to give us what we need, especially encrypted files. Encrypted files, if it is a hack, it is a ransomware, those encrypted files are your files. Don't delete them because we might need to unencrypt them somehow. Audit for unusual tasks and scripts and policies. Again, this is more internal. We're going to be doing this on behalf of our clients. We're going to be looking for odd things that are out of the ordinary. Disable user accounts associated. So you're going to disable the user accounts that have been that we think are involved in this. And again, you want to be more broad, and then so better disable everything, and then re-enable it as you know it's safe. Better to take the more broad approach on this, but we're definitely going to disable those user accounts, terminate active sessions. We're going to disable anything that's active. Again, this is going to be also for those of you who have internal people who are working on this. We're going to disable anything that's in active session right now. Anybody who's currently connected to the network, we want to disable it. We're going to minimize the logging of events and what's going on. Again, we're going to reset all the passwords. Now, it says for affected users. I'm a big fan of just resetting all the passwords across the board for everybody. I don't see why you wouldn't take the more broad approach to that. But again, clients that have tens of thousands of users, that may not be as practical. All right, isolation. So we're going to isolate the endpoints. So those endpoints that are affected, we're going to take them offline and bring them off the network so they can't affect the other computers. We're going to do that as much as possible. Ensure the backups are isolated and protected. Now, our clients, your backups on site are isolated and protected into another domain with another admin login. Basically, we're trying to isolate those. I want to make sure that's the case. But the other thing that's really important is that our clients, we have offsite backup for our clients, and that is really the best key scenario, is to have offsite backup, which is going to protect your data by leaving it at another location. Is it foolproof? Of course not. Nothing entirely is foolproof, but it's the best protection that you can get right now is to have that offsite backup. Isolate the endpoints and user accounts for those. We talked about that. Isolate the backup devices. So even though on the internal side, when we have the backup devices isolated, theoretically, we may actually disconnect those from the network as well. And a lot of times we're going to start making a backup of the backup as well in this scenario. Any access to any emails, we're going to suspend those and disable them. And then also we're going to look for rules that may be enabled for email account forwarding or delegated access. We want to make sure that nobody logged into that account and start setting up forwarding rules, which is a very common thing to do. And then for those in an on-prem environment, we're going to create Hyper-V checkpoints all along the way. We're going to create a bunch of them. All right, let's talk about steps to prevent the spread. Multi-factor authentication. Oh my gosh, please, 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 please make sure you have multi-factor authentication set up all the time, everywhere. Confirm the AV is enabled and up to date. All right, so we want to make sure that all of the endpoints are up to date. Going to back up any log files because they're going to give us some key information on what happened and where it happened. Going to verify the offsite. So basically what we're going to do is take those take those offsite and onsite backups and start working on them. A lot of times what we're going to do is actually start the spin up process early in the process because it takes a long time to spin up a server offsite. We might start that process long before we even know that we need it, just so that we've already started that process. We highly recommend that as well. Start imaging of affecting devices. We actually want to take copies of those affected devices, even if they're encrypted. We want to get copies of them so that we can always get back to where we are, always get back to step one. We're going to start new backups of all the servers. We might bring in totally different devices and start a new backup of those servers while we're doing the restore off the current backup devices. Very common for us. We may also bring out loaner servers for those that are on-prem. We have loaner servers on hand just for that reason. That will bring up a physical loaner server and physical NAS device out to your location. And then we're going to triage and see if further remediation is needed. We'll talk about remediation. Let's go into that. So once the incident's been scoped, that's when we start the remediation, right? We start and we'll increase the chances of successful. Basically, what we want to do is there's a little bit of things that are going to be a little bit of a fire drill happening right at once. A lot of things are going to happen. And then we're going to take a step back and just take a breather and say, okay, what's our next step? And building that plan is going to be a key part of building that remediation. All right, so we're going to cut off access to the environment. We're going to identify and patch any vulnerable systems. And then we're going to remediate the malware. We're going to make sure that all of the updates, all the malware is up to date. We may reimage or remove some systems as needed. Might revert back to a clean backup as well. As you know, that's the why we do backups, so that we might restore back to one before going through. Then here's the key thing. After this is done, we're going to keep monitoring for reinfected devices. So here's what happens. If the bad actors, depending on how good they are at what they do, sometimes what they will do is they will bury what they're doing several layers deep. Much like when a surgeon is going in and doing an operation and they're trying to get out all the bad stuff that they can, and they say, okay, come back for a follow-up visit. We're going to see if we got everything. It's the same thing here. The same thing, same type of infection. Sometimes an infection is buried so deep that you get all the big stuff, everything that you can get, but they still leave a little bit behind. Now that's where the follow-up comes in, is they try and get in and get that rest of that stuff that they might have left behind. And then resetting all the admin passwords. That one should be a no-brainer, but we're going to do it several times during this case. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to show you what it looks like to recover a live server. I thought this would be really cool for you to see. This is what it looks like when we have to boot up your server offsite and the steps that we have to go through and what it looks like. Now, typically this process is going to take between 24 and 40, or it could take as little as 4 hours, but it's going to take somewhere between 4 and 48 hours, depending on the size of the data and everything like that. So we want to show you that. So let's cut over to that right now.
Carlos, I am the head backup nerd here at Enable, and I want to thank you for inviting me to this Braver Technology Hacked webinar. So I'm going to take a few minutes today to talk about some of the technology, or at least one of the pieces of technology that Braver uses in order to protect your data from hardware failure, corruption, things like ransomware, and environments where you've been hacked. Now, the technicians at Braver go through a lot of pains to ensure that the platform that they're using is secured. On the back end, that's about securing the management interface, or the management console that's used to essentially provide access to all of your backup information. And there's a series of functions that they go about to ensure that level of security, from using only named users and ensuring that there aren't shared access accounts inside of the environment, limited and privileged level access that's being enforced, mandatory multi-factor authentication, the fact that they don't leave the systems logged into, they're using strong passwords and a password manager with zero password reuse. So lots of technologies in place to ensure that the backend platform is secure and not capable of being accessed or tampered with by a bad actor. But it also goes into securing the local client side. So the backup client that's sitting out on each of your endpoints, that's protecting that line of business application, that server, that workstation, that laptop. And the things that go into place there are selections based on profiles. That way they're locked and secured, preventing local change. The ability to lock or restrict remote access. The ability to turn on GUI passwords to prevent access to a local client. All of the data is protected at the source. It's sent over a TLS 1.2 tunnel and utilizes AES 256-bit encryption. So that's data at rest and data in motion using full encryption. The environment can use system-managed encryption keys or private encryption keys, providing enable with zero knowledge of your encryption. And then you can control the frequency of your backups, whether you want to do a daily backup or every 6 hours, every 4 hours, even every hourly on those mission-critical applications or user directories. You can enable archiving for extended retention, so that way you've got rollback points at the end of the month, end of the quarter, end of the year, to ensure that if you are compromised, you're recovering from either a recent data protection session, or if you need to go back before that corruption, maybe grabbing the last end of month or end of week archive point. We support the ability to utilize what we call a local speed vault. That local speed vault ensures that you've got a local deduped, compressed, and encrypted copy of the data that can act as a backup cache or restore cache, helping to more quickly restore your infrastructure. The data centers that we utilize, there are currently 27 data centers throughout about 17 countries. From a U.S. And Canada perspective, we are going to utilize local data centers, so spread throughout the U.S. or Canada. And there's various certifications that are going to be applied to those data centers, whether it be HIPAA, ISO 27001, NIST, PCI DSS, SOC 1 and SOC 2. So if there are any particular requirements coming in from your cyber insurance security providers around data center certifications, reach out to the folks over at Braver, and they'll provide those certificates back from Enable. Now, it's not just about having a backup solution in place to ensure that you've got that last line of defense in the event of ransomware, hardware failures, or that your system has been hacked. It's also about proactive monitoring. So the techs at Braver have the ability to essentially monitor all of your data protection devices. You'll be able to see them in a centralized view and dig in a little bit deeper to manage by exception. This is where they can identify devices that are at risk from being underprotected or overprotected. They can monitor growth and spikes and changes in your data protection solution. They can have these dashboards customized, sorted, and filtered, and either exported to provide you detailed reports, or they can send out emails based on the success and or failures of individual devices inside of your organization. They can also go in and look at device audits. The device audit allows me to see the exact changes and configurations that have been modified for a given device over time. One of the other proactive features available with the Cove Data Protection solution offered by Braver is that you can perform optional recovery testing. Now, here at Enable, we recommend that you do your recovery testing at a minimum at half the frequency of your retention interval. So if you're doing a default 28-day retention, we recommend you do a recovery test every 2 weeks, for example. These recovery tests are either manual or automated. They can be hosted by Enable servers or performed on-premise with your own hypervisors. But what it does is it boots a virtualized clone of your production system in a secured environment and allows us to take a screenshot of that test boot. That can be sent out to you via email or stored in the console as proof of life or proof of performance. And many of the cyber insurance policy providers out there today are requiring something similar. They want to have that automated recurring recovery testing in place so they can prove that you had good backups before that hardware failure or that ransom took place. Now, even if you have all of those proactive things in place, the bad actors can still get in. They will find a way. Somebody's going to click an email or open an application, or they're going to find a back door or a window that they can get into your organization. And if they do, you do want to ensure that you've got multiple recovery options available to you to get the right kind of data back in a rapid or short period of time. We offer several different recovery technologies. There's granular recovery at file and folder level. We can do application or volume level recovery if we need to, in case you've had a hardware failure or just a corrupted application. We support things like continuous restore, where we support a standby image or a standby virtual machine, a failover virtual machine that could be running in your infrastructure on your hypervisors. Or we can do full system recovery, either as a physical server out to a virtual environment through our virtual disaster recovery technology. That would be recovering into a VMware, a Hyper-V, or flat VMDK and VHD files. Or we can do a physical bare metal recovery back to similar or dissimilar hardware. And that bare metal recovery is that last line of defense if you are looking to recover from ransomware. You've had a failure, you've replaced the hardware, you've reformatted the hard drives, you've put new hardware in place in order to do the recoveries, those kind of things. And then you're going to utilize bare metal recovery to get your data back. Now, bare metal recovery is going to allow you to boot your system up into one of two different types of boot media. It's either going to be an ISO image, a CD that you can boot to, or a USB boot stick that we'll create for you to boot. And you're going to boot up into a light Windows PE environment where I can use it to recover the base operating system, the applications, and the user data for my Windows servers and Windows workstations. As I said, you can support dissimilar hardware, and it's going to load up this light browser and a light version of the backup client so that we can come in, pick a point in time, and lay down that operating system, application, and user data right on a bare or clean disk. We're going to load drivers, we're going to repartition the hardware, repartition the operating system partition, the data partitions, lay down the application, the user data. At the end of that restore process, we may end up going in and repairing the boot sector if it needs it, so that you've got a system that is capable of being restored back to the original point in time. Now, as you see on the screen here, we're going through a bare metal recovery. We've booted up into that ISO image, and we've got data being transferred back now. Now, I've got this in a bit of a time lapse, so we can see data recovery over time. So it's going through now and calculating what it needs to recover, building out a playlist, if you will, of all the files it's going to need to download, going to need to rehydrate and decrypt to lay back down on that repartitioned OS. If we move forward a little bit in this scenario here, we'll see that it's starting to lay down those files. So we've got about 170,000 files it's going to be recovering for this particular C volume recovery. As we move through this a little bit further, you're going to see that it's going to start to slowly tick away at that recovery scenario. And we'll get a little bit closer to the end here, about 130,000 files through now, 140,000. The last few steps of a bare metal recovery, we're going to see it lay down the final set of files and report back as completed. You can see here if there were any errors, the kind of duration or time that it took. And you're going to go through that final boot phase where you shut down any standby virtual machines you were using or any temporary systems you were using and do a final reboot of this recovered system to bring it back to a production status. So here we're getting devices ready, maybe installing those additional drivers if we changed hardware. Maybe we went from a Dell to an HP system, something like that. Once the system is has the drivers updated, drivers installed, you will be presented with a boot screen. You can go through that first login now, post-recovery. You'll be presented with a little bit of a notice or an error message saying that the system was rebooted. Please let us know why the system was recovered this way. In this case, we're just going to log in as a bare metal recovery, and that way the event log will know that this is the recovered system from that prior session. So that concludes the quick talk on recovery options today from Enable and our Cove Data Protection Solution. I want to thank the guys over at Braver for having me today, and I look forward to participating in future webinars. Thanks.
Okay, so let's talk about post-event analysis. So let's talk about what happens after the fact. So as I mentioned, prevention is better than a cure, right? So we want to know what happens. We want to take a look at this objectively, and we're going to say, okay, did everybody do what they needed to do? Was everybody in the right spots? Did everybody take the right steps? And again, as I said at the beginning, that if this is a bad enough incident, the worst thing would happen is if you don't learn from it, right? Review how each person performed. How did they do in their role? Were they successful? You're going to modify your incident response plan. This plan that you created today, how well did it work? You're going to schedule table talk. You're going to schedule talking about this incident. Okay, let's go through a mock trial again. This is something we highly recommend even before then. You just sit around the table and just talk about, okay, what happens step by step by step. You play your plan out. All right, avoiding future incidents. 24/7 SOC. So basically, all of our clients have a very high-end endpoint detection package, and also we have a 24/7 SOC. Why do we have a 24/7 SOC in place? Because a lot of times these bad actors are attacking at a time that's either in the middle of the night or when somebody's on vacation. That's not an accident. That's on purpose. What they're doing, it's very easy for me to find out. Well, middle of the night is easy, but it's very easy for me to find out when a key person is on vacation, right? I just call up and say, hey, can I talk to such and such? No, they're away this week. All right, now I know it's a great time to attack. That's why the 24/7 is so important. It's going to analyze what's going on the network. There's a live person that's going to start remediating this right away. As I mentioned before, the sooner we can remediate it, the better chance we have of stopping the spread and recovering it. That's why we have a 24/7 SOC for our clients. The next thing that we do for our clients, we do security scorecards. On a regular basis, we give them a list of what they have for protection, what types of protection they don't have, so they can make an educated decision on if they are protected and if they're in the right spot. All right, security templates. We have security templates available to our clients that you can request on a regular basis. So a lot of these security policies and templates we've written up for you. We know there's a lot of security insurance companies that are acquiring them, a lot of SOC audits, a lot of NIST audits, all those are requiring them. So we started putting together templates for you. You can reach out to our team to get a hold of thing templates. Next thing I want to talk about is our Cyber 74 division. Cyber 74 is our advanced security division. We keep these guys at an arm's length. We give them a totally different name. They work in a different location. We keep them at an arm's length. The reason that we do that is we want them to have an impartial, independent view and attack on things. Plus, this is all they do. All they do is work on this. Again, this is the equivalent of we are the general practitioners. Our job is to keep you healthy and keep you up and running, keep your heart running, keep your blood pressure in check, make sure that your vision is okay, all of those things. Cyber 74, they're the heart surgeons. They're the cardiologists. That's all they specialize in, this one thing. And they just dig down and go into that one thing. And a lot of times it's really important. So this is a list of the times that you would use Cyber 74. They do detection response, threat protection, continuous testing, but then also they do in-depth cybersecurity audits. They do security assessment testing. They do true penetration testing. True penetration testing is pretty cool and pretty in-depth. This could take 30, 40, 50 hours of them just doing nothing but trying to break into your network. It's scary what they find, but it's so much better for them to find it before something happens than the bad guys to find it. It's so much better. The penetration is amazing. Managed security services, detection and response, malware and threat protection, security incident response. This is what I was talking about, that if you are in an incident, this is when you want to have a dedicated incident response team in place that knows what they're doing. These are what these guys do. Breach remediation, litigation support. These are a lot of things that we just talked about earlier. How do we stop the flow? Talking about legal on it. And then compliance, NIST and CMMC compliance. SOC 2 compliance too. Sorry, I didn't miss that. Okay, we covered some great ground here. Let's talk about what we covered. We talked about an incident response plan. We talked about the steps that you're going to take. We talked about organize your troops, preventing the spread and assessing the damage. We're conducting the post-analysis event and then avoiding future events. These are all a lot of things. What do you want to do? You want to make sure that your team is signed up for our weekly cybersecurity tips. Every week we send out a new cybersecurity tip. You want to have your team sign up on this. Get this right from our website. Awareness training. This video, all of our training videos up on our website, free. Everybody can watch this. Why do we do that? Why wouldn't we have it as a gated access? Very simple. We need to put these bad guys out of business. We need to get them so they don't make money anymore. The way to do that is to get the user base trained. We want to do our part. Rising tide lifts all ships. That's what we want to do. We want every user out there to be aware. We have in-depth cybersecurity training. We have individual cybersecurity training on phishing, on social engineering, on website trafficking, on website bruising. We try and keep these all short. Like this one's going to be, this one has about 20, 29 minutes, 30 minutes. We try and keep some of them short, some of them 15 to 20 minutes long. We're trying to make it really easy and digestible. Okay. That is everything I had to cover today. Thank you so much for your time. I hope this is helpful. If you're on YouTube, please like and subscribe. This really, really helps us get this message out and let us know that we're on the right track. Thank you so much. Have an amazing day.